Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of this F1 25 Joshua Pearce career mode. This is part 19 of the series. If you did miss the last episode, Yuki Tsunoda claimed his first ever career in Formula 1, and what a crazy one it was to win, with Charles Leclerc crossing the line in second and myself with a very lucky podium. Fifth was absolutely on the cards for us. It was looking like we'd sealed the deal for a P5 until the red flag came, where with Max Verstappen outside of the points, Lando Norris looked set to win the race until he put it into the fence, which caused the red flag and gave us the opportunity to snatch a podium away very late into the Grand Prix. And even with all that going on, the lead at the top stayed the same, with Verstappen's lead staying at 66 points to Lando Norris. Myself in third, 65 points behind Lando. Our teammate Hayes is in ninth. He's 66 points behind George Russell, and Red Bull lead the Constructors' Championship by 85 points to McLaren. Then it's Ferrari in third, 66 points behind McLaren. And Apex GP, we find ourselves sitting fourth, 100 points behind the Scuderia Ferrari. And we're going to take a look at the chassis department with the minor weight reduction upgrade with the new rear floor under trays, and this upgrade should put our chassis department better than the rest of the grid, and it has a low failure rate as well, which means that I'm going to try and rush it to have it before the next Grand Prix in Texas. And we're going to take a look at the aerodynamics as well. After fast forwarding some time, we have enough points now to look at this major DRS upgrade with the activation mechanism, and this one will just have a standard development rate, just because not only is it a major upgrade, because if I rush it, it's going to come in after Mexico anyways, so there's no point taking the risk when I'm not really going to be gaining any time. So just a standard development for that one. And we're going to take a look at the amount of upgrades we have on the car for this weekend. So many have arrived for the sprint weekend, so not a lot of practice time to properly know how they're going to feel, but with this many here, hopefully we can be competitive around the track, and it's a track I honestly struggle a bit, so hopefully this will aid it just a little bit this weekend. And just to make things worse for my confidence going into a weekend where I just said I'm not very confident around the track, heading into this weekend, the weather is not looking good. It's overcast with a chance of rain for the sprint race. Qualifying will be dry, but towards the end possibly wet, creating challenging conditions for Q3, and the race should be dry hopefully. So hopefully if we can just survive the sprint and the qualifying, hopefully all should go well for the Grand Prix. And with all of these upgrades, our performance on paper has now well and truly gapped the likes of McLaren, and the other teams have also made big ground in car performance, with Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull now nearly on par with McLaren. Aston Martin and Williams also bring upgrades to pull further away from the bottom few teams, and the Racing Bulls are still considered the slowest car, but just take a look at how close the performance is. There's nothing separating these bottom teams, so it's all to play for between them to try and scrape through some points towards the final few rounds of this season. So let's jump straight into sprint qualifying.
It's a United States love affair with Formula One at the moment, so what a thrill for everyone today to see our drivers lapping COTA at full hot lap speed. It's the Circuit of the Americas, and it's qualifying.
And it's all looking a bit gloomy out there today here in Texas. Hopefully that will keep our tyre temperatures down, because the hot lapping around here does cause a little bit of overheating. Sometimes, especially with the softer compound tyres, they tend to overheat, especially through the first sector where it's just those fast S's. We go fastest on the medium compound tyre here in sprint qualifying, and that will actually put Max Verstappen ahead of us by the end of the session by only a tenth. And it's Carlos Sainz in third. In the Williams, a fantastic performance, be only 3 tenths behind, and our teammate Sonny Hayes is down in P14, 1.2 seconds behind, and knocked out in Q1 here. Kimi Antonelli in the upgraded Mercedes, Oliver Behrman, Jack Doohan, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortola and Liam Lawson makes both the Racing Bulls out of the session, and we'll jump straight to the end of our only flying lap here in the second part of sprint qualifying, and we will go fastest out of everyone, and by 15 thousandths of a second ahead of Charles Leclerc. Then it's Hamilton in third. He's only 500ths behind his teammate, so it's very close up the front with the Ferraris. Then knocked out in SQ2 here is Lance Stroll by 10th by his own teammate. Then it's Esteban Ocon, our teammate Sonny Hayes, which is very disappointing considering all the upgrades we have this weekend, that hasn't made it out of this part of qualifying. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt though, because in practice Hayes actually never did a single lap. He did not set a time at all, so his first laps of the weekend is here in sprint qualifying. Nico Hulkenberg and last race winner Yuki Tsunoda, as well as Carlos Sainz, did not make it to this final part of qualifying here as we cross the line, and that is going to be sprint pole position for us here in Coda. These upgrades are working an absolute treat, and it's by an entire 0.2 of a second ahead of Lando Norris. Championship leader Max Verstappen is in third, 0.3 behind, and after a strong Q2, the two Ferraris end up lining up P6 and P7, so where have their pace gone?
Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Joshua Pearce lines up on pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Verstappen, Piastri, George Russell and Hamilton, Leclerc, Albon, Fernando Alonso and Pierre Gasly, Stroll, Ocon, Sonny Hayes and Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, Sainz, Andrea Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman, Doohan, Hadjar, Bortoletto and Liam Lawson rounds off the grid. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
Okay, let's have a comms check, please. Radio check. We're still in with a chance of winning this title. We need you to push as hard as you can in the 5 remaining races.
I think it's a bit ambitious there from Mark, our engineer, to say that it's still within a shot that we could claim ourselves a World Drivers' Championship in our rookie season, but with the inconsistencies the top two have shown, it's very still much a possibility. Medium tyre for today's strategy. No stops planned in this sprint race. We've got 10 laps ahead of us for Kota, and it's lights out, and we're off for the sprint race here in Texas, and it's a pretty good start for ourselves. We're going to immediately cover the inside line with how wide this main straight is. Have to cover it off, otherwise we will get sent with a big snap of oversteer on the exit there, but we maintain P1 ahead of Lando Norris and the other McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who's going side by side with Lewis Hamilton in that Ferrari. So he's had a really good start to now get himself up onto the sprint podium. He's got himself ahead of Oscar Piastri, and it's Verstappen, George Russell, Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc currently sits in the last points paying position here in this sprint race. Remember, only the top 8 receive points. Our teammate, he's battling with Alex Albon in that Williams, and he's trying to get himself inside the top 10. So he's had an absolute ripper start as well, starting from all the way down in P14, and that is going to be an absolute brilliant drive if he can get himself up into the points. We are driving the fastest car on the grid, so hopefully he can make that work. But back to ourselves here. We're under attack from Lando Norris. He doesn't want to sit back behind us for too long. He's in a big championship fight here, so he's trying to get every single point that he can. Him in being in P1, that's 8 points to his name, with Verstappen down in P5, but that means he is at the moment at a net gain in this championship as he pops himself ahead of ourselves. Our teammate Sonny Hayes back down in P10. He's looking though to try and get himself ahead of Pierre Gasly, and he's going to do that in the DRS zone before they even make it to the break, so a very easy move. Russell and Verstappen are now battling it out, and it's Russell getting ahead of Verstappen. So what's going on with Max here? He is absolutely falling down the field. He started on the second row of the grid, now finds himself down in 6th position as Charles Leclerc. He's getting himself ahead of Fernando Alonso, both of them with the DRS within 1 second of the car ahead. And now it is our teammate Sonny Hayes. He is looking to try and defend the position from Pierre Gasly. He got the position just a couple of laps ago, well, sorry, the last lap around, and he's now back behind the Alpine. So the Alpine showing like it's got really good pace, but that is not going to stay for too long, because our teammate, as quickly as he got Pierre Gasly and then got re-overtaken, he's now back in front of the Alpine and claiming that P9, trying to now chase down Fernando Alonso to claim that one crucial point in this championship that could get him up into P8. He's got a bit of ground to claim, though, to try and catch up to George Russell in that championship, but every point will matter, especially here in the sprint. Mark, though, that's not very comforting, telling us we've got an issue at the moment. So I am now on a little bit of the edge. I want to try and get myself ahead of Lando Norris now, if I can, because if I've got some sort of issue that could slow me down a little bit, I want to be ahead of Lando. I'd much rather defend than have to try and attack with a wounded car. At the moment, though, it looks like everything's all good. I can't see anything blatantly obvious that is broken with the car at the moment. And no, is this going to be our first engine failure of the season? It is. That's our first engine failure of the season. And from P2, we're looking like we probably could have won that. I was biding my time, sitting in P2, just charging up the battery, pretty much waiting for a time to pounce, and that's all out the window. That is That's upsetting. A lot of hope for this race weekend. In the end, Lando Norris, he will win the sprint race with Hamilton and Verstappen up on the sprint podium. So Max actually did recover after our DNF. The rest of the top 8 is George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, and our teammate Sonny Hayes with a brilliant drive from 13th to get himself a championship point. Myself and Ocon are non-finishers in this sprint race, and it was our MGUK that failed in the sprint race. So hopefully putting in a new one will resolve this issue for the rest of the race weekend. But with it being the end of the season, a few rounds to go, I am a little short on parts if I wanted to try and not get engine penalties. So I might have to consider at a track that's pretty easy to overtake at, taking a bunch of engine penalties and just pretty much guaranteeing a start from the rear.
It's a United States love affair with Formula One at the moment, so what a thrill for everyone today to see our drivers lapping COTA at full hot lap speed. It's the Circuit of the Americas, and it's qualifying.
Alrighty, it is qualifying take 2 here. We got pole position last time round. This time there is a little bit of rain forecasted, but it doesn't look too bad at the moment. So let's see what we can do. On our first flying lap though, Lance Stroll, it looks like he's getting out of the way and he cuts back across the track and he's hit us. Well, we've gone into him, but what was he doing? I kept going full pace on my lap because it looked like he was hanging around the outside to let me through, and then he cuts back across the racing line and we collided past. I've had to come in, fix the car, and we've gone back out on the same set of tyres that we were on, and we do go fastest by nearly half a second to George Russell. But man, that was just an unnecessary collision there, and not very heads up driving from Stroll there. Albon is in third, so the Williams looks like they love a cheeky P3 here and there. Our teammate Sonny Hayes down in P4, 1.1 seconds behind, and knocked out in Q1. Here's Nico Hulkenberg by 400ths. Then to Liam Lawson, Kimi Antonelli once again knocked out in the first part of qualifying. Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, and the second racing bull of Isaac Hadjar is out, and the rain is here. What a shock this was for me to head out onto the circuit. I saw that the intermediates were set, but I was thinking maybe it's only just started raining, but no, the track is absolutely soaked, and you can just see how little grip I've got here. Through a corner that, even on like 99% worn tyres, is absolutely flat out. I could not take that flat out, and then I've tried going through here at some sort of pace, but the car was just understeering. I could not get anything to work, and out through here, I'm constantly chasing the rear end of the car. It just wants to keep trying to get out from behind me, and I've just got zero grip, and you can just see how much wetter the circuit has got from when I started this lap to coming to the end of it. So I'm hoping this first flying lap here is going to be good enough to get me through, because I don't think this track's going to be improving anytime soon, and it is P9, so hopefully that will be good enough for us. And we've now gone out on the wet weather compound tyres, because you can see there, Leclerc, he went faster than quite a few people by going out onto the wets. Unfortunately though, I just could not find any sort of improvements on my lap, so we are knocked out in the second part of qualifying. Verstappen, on the other hand, he's fastest by 0.8 to Oscar Piastri, and there's Hamilton in third, 1.5 seconds behind. Our teammate does make it in. He's P4, 1.9 seconds behind. And then knocked out alongside with me is Charles Leclerc, Jack Doohan, Esteban Ocon, Bortoleto, and Alex Albon.
Well, you don't need me to remind you that Formula One is now so beloved in the United States that we race here 3 times a year. But let's give respect to COTA, or the Circuit of the Americas, to give it its full name. This place laid the foundations for this moment and still remains the host of the US Grand Prix. It's the Circuit of the Americas then, situated 14 miles outside of the great city of Austin. This is a 3.6-mile lap with 20 corners, 10 to the left and 10 to the right, and top speeds of around 200 miles per hour. Overtaking opportunities are available into turns 1 and 12, especially with that rear wing DRS wide open. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Lance Stroll lines up on pole position, and Ollie Behrman completes the front row. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Verstappen, Norris, Oscar Piastri and Hamilton, Russell, Tsunoda, Gasly and Charles Leclerc, Doohan, Pearce, Esteban Ocon and Bortoleto, Albon, Hulkenberg, Liam Lawson and Sonny Hayes, Fernando Alonso, Sainz, Hadjar and Andrea Kimi Antonelli rounds off the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? So I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about this afternoon, and who's going to talk about it with us? None other than Naomi Schiff. Hi, Naomi. Now, you're the racing driver in this partnership, so tell us about this racing driver. Put us in their shoes. How are they going to be feeling?
It's a very special time for the drivers. It's almost like everything around you slows down and you become hyper-aware. So your nerves slightly go up, your adrenaline's going up. It's the perfect time to start focusing on your visualizations and preparing for the race. So you want to avoid distractions and really stay cool, calm, and focused.
Okay, radio check, radio check. Fantastic podium at the last race, mate, but there's still a little bit of room in that trophy cabinet back at the factory. Let's see if we can fill it again.
My God, the rain definitely does switch things up. We've got a front row of Stroll on pole position and Oliver Behrman. Wow, we've got a race on our hands coming up soon, but to start off with, we've got a one-stop strategy going for the mediums and then to the hards on lap 13. As we get set, it's a very different front row than what we're used to, but it's 5 red lights and we're off for the American Grand Prix, and we are getting a pretty good start alongside Jack Doohan. We're going to go to the inside though and see if we can't make up a couple of positions here. Tad early on the brakes, going uphill into turn 1, and we're going to try and get the traction down on Charles Leclerc, who's currently side by side with Pierre Gasly, I think that was, in the end. Leclerc's going to get a very good exit though, and he's actually getting himself ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. We're going very cautious though, because we don't want to make any contact with anyone else, but in the end, that just invites Pierre Gasly to go around our outside through the S, so a very opportunistic move from the Frenchman, but just as opportunistic, we're going to go around his outside now, and then he goes to turn in on us, and we take avoiding action. In the end, he realized we were there last second and turned away, but that was probably a little bit closer than it had to be. Expecting him to turn in on us, and possibly us getting damage on lap 1 is definitely not what we want to be doing here, as we get a really good exit on Yuki Tsunoda, but unfortunately, with no DRS, that Red Bull definitely does have a bit better straight line speed, as proven here by Max Verstappen. He's getting himself now up into second position, ahead of Oliver Behrman, but Stroll, he's checked out. He's 1.5 seconds up the road. Is Stroll here on for a really good result with the Aston Martin? That's probably the best of the rest car in terms of performance, and by the end, or start of lap 2, that gap has maintained. It is still 1.5 seconds to him ahead of Max Verstappen. The two McLarens, though, they're in P4, P6, so the ones trying to chase down the Red Bulls aren't really making a massive amount of ground compared to the Red Bulls, as Lando gets himself ahead of Lewis Hamilton, but he couldn't get himself ahead of Oliver Behrman. As back on board with ourselves here, we're chasing down Yuki Tsunoda. He's on the soft compound tyre, so is he maybe on a 2-stopper here? I'm guessing, based off everyone else of being on the mediums, that everyone else is on a 1-stopper. And Yuki, though, going for the 2-stopper, so we'll have to see how his strategy ends up playing out. We get ahead of him, though. We're now up into P9, but look how much this little pack here has brought up and closed up with Lando Norris. So he's sent a move on Oliver Behrman. That's now him up into 3rd position, but him having a slow exit while trying to gather everything back up after sending that dive bomb has meant that we've all bunched up, and so it's all very close quarters racing, as now we head into the final corner, and I wasn't expecting him to slop that much, and so I've kind of gone for an accidental dive bomb on Charles Leclerc, caught him napping just a tiny little bit, and we'll get the power down on the DRS and the ERS, and it's a drag race now down into turn 1, uphill braking into the first corner, and we'll get the move completed. We'll squeeze him out just a little bit on the exit to discourage him from keeping his nose in there, and that is us now up into P8, and we are making excellent progress after being knocked out in qualifying 2. Verstappen, though, he is looking to go for the lead of this Grand Prix ahead of Stroll, so he's brought the gap down from 1.5 seconds to overtaking opportunity, and that is him now into the lead. Stroll will sit P2, Norris is in 3rd, Oliver Behrman, he's in 5th position, so he's still holding on relatively alright, but unfortunately, once you kind of get overtaken once, it does tend to be a bit of an invitation for everyone else to go through, because now he's overtaken by George Russell. He's going to try and keep his nose in there and go side by side through this fast S section of the opening sector of the lap, and I reckon George Russell's going to get him, and George Russell will get him, so Behrman drops down to 6th position, and up next to try and get him will be Oscar Piastri, who we sit behind currently at the moment. Piastri with the DRS is going to get by Oliver Behrman. Can we follow him through? We look maybe to try and go 3 wide and get Piastri as well, but in the end we think better of it. Behrman tries to go around the outside, so we try and get the cut back on him, better traction down, and we'll now look around the outside as we kind of head into this little stadium section with a really awkward double left-hander with a kind of cambered, not cambered braking zone, you tend to lock the inside front quite easily going into there. But we make the move stick into 7th position, and now we have to chase down Oscar Piastri. And so Marco knows that we have to get by this McLaren, because if we don't get by the McLaren now, we could then become under attack from Charles Leclerc, who is looking to line up Oliver Behrman directly behind us. So if we can get ourselves past the McLaren, I reckon probably the next best car on the circuit is the Ferrari of Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. So these Ferraris have been absolutely rapid around here so far this weekend. So if we get ourselves past that McLaren, which we have, then we kind of put a car between us and that Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. The two Hasses now, they're battling it out, so no team orders at all down in the Haas garage. Behrman wants to try and hold on to his P9, but it looks like Ocon is going to be able to take that one away from him as they go side by side through the S section, and that is him now up into P9. But it's a double points paying position so far still for Haas here this weekend. We breeze past on George Russell though with the DRS, so that's another position now between us and that Ferrari, and that really now means that we're in a good position here to try and score some healthy points, sitting P5 after starting further down the order. Our teammate Sonny Hayes, he's now inside the point, so he's dispatched Oliver Behrman, and now he's immediately looking to try and get himself ahead of Esteban Ocon going up into turn 1, and that is going to be a pretty easy move for our teammates. He'll give him a little bit of a shaft out wide, and that will be him now up into 9th position. So our teammate also on a charge now through the field, and it's looking like we've got a double points paying position here for Apex GP as well. We got ourselves now ahead of Lando Norris, so that is us dispatching the second McLaren, and we've now caught right up to the back of Lewis Hamilton for getting us onto the podium, which has been absolutely a wicked recovery drive so far in the opening 9 laps of this Grand Prix. The other McLaren of Oscar Piastri is looking to get himself past the Mercedes of George Russell. Both these cars running the Mercedes power unit, so it's going to be a straight up drag race, and it's all going to be about set up now between these two guys going through the S section side by side, and they in the end let Piastri go through into 6th position. So McLaren sit 5th and 6th on the road at the moment. As Hamilton, he's looking to get himself now up into 2nd position. So Stroll, I've been saying that Stroll's been looking pretty good so far in this Grand Prix. He managed to immediately pull out a decent gap over him to Max Verstappen, but since Max Verstappen's got through, he has now pulled out 7 seconds as we now go by Stroll as well. So is the Aston Martin just maybe starting to face that tyre wear a little bit? We're 10 laps into a stint. Remember, I'm boxing onto lap 13, so we're definitely going to be coming towards the end of the life of these mediums. So is the Aston Martin just slightly a little bit worse for wear on the tyres, and hence he's starting to fall through the field. But now me and Hamilton, we've got a 6.5 and pretty much 7 second gap to try and chase down to Max Verstappen if we want a shot at this race win. Fernando Alonso, he wants to get himself now inside the points here, and he'll have to go around the outside of Esteban Ocon in the Haas, and if he does make this move stick, that will now be both Hasses from within the points now out of the points here in the United States Grand Prix. But Ocon, he will hold on to that position just for now ahead of Fernando Alonso. It's lap 11 now, so the opening 10 laps of the Grand Prix have been completed. So let's do a order check here for Max Verstappen. He currently leads the way, but he's pulling over. He's got a 7-second lead, and he's pulling over. Is there some sort of issue? Does he have a puncture him? No, it looks like he's going to be pulling off to the side of the road, and this is day done for Max Verstappen. He was leading quite comfortably the Grand Prix, but his engine has gone up in smokes. So now we find ourselves in a battle for the lead with Lewis Hamilton. That is the lead directly in front of us. So what it looks like was going to be a case of we're going to have to try and get ourselves ahead of Hamilton to chase down Max Verstappen has turned into battling for the lead with Hamilton. The other Ferrari is also under attack from an Apex GP car, but it's our teammate Sonny Hayes on Charles Leclerc around the outside at the first corner. Is he going to be able to get it done? It will give him the inside for the next part of this opening sector, and he will drive ahead of that Ferrari. So that gives me a little bit of hope that we can get by Lewis Hamilton, because our teammate has been able to get himself by a Ferrari, and we'll now do an order check here for the top 10. So it's Hamilton, myself, Norris, your top 3, Stroll, then Piastri, and George Russell is sitting in 6th position. Our teammate, we just saw him get by Charles Leclerc for P7 and P8. Then it's Fernando Alonso, and Esteban Ocon holds on to 10th position now with Max Verstappen falling out the race. One of the houses does get promoted up into that position, and while we're doing that order check, we got our next objective that we need to stay ahead of Lando Norris. So now that we've seen that later on to the stints, we are faster than the Ferraris, our teammate has just proven that. The Ferraris are no longer our main target. We now need to keep an eye on those McLarens. The McLarens are looking pretty good so far, going later into this stint. Norris has started closing that gap up to us now, as we're currently just sitting in the DRS of Lewis Hamilton, waiting for our moment to pounce, as our teammate now gets himself ahead of George Russell as well. So he is making up great ground, and so are we. We found that moment that we wanted to pounce, and we used the DRS to get ourselves into the lead on the same lap that coming in for the pits. And then, so that definitely means that these tyres are still pretty good, but I say pretty good, only a couple of laps later, we get our tyre wear icon. So I was actually considering maybe extending for a lap or two, just to shorten up that hard compound tyre stint just a little bit. But when I saw that tyre icon come up, I was like, nah, it is time to come in, and we're going to box on the lap that we were meant to. Hamilton, he'll go around again though, so maybe that Ferrari does have the slightly better tyre wear, and we'll have to see where we come out ahead of him or behind him, depending on how good of an outlap we can do and an in-lap he can do. It's a 2.4 second pit stop time, so pretty good for ourselves. We're going to come out in some clean air. We're not going to be battling anyone on the exit. We've got Alonso coming up behind us, but he is a little bit too far back to mount any sort of attack. Now onto the next lap. Hamilton, he will be boxing now, so he's extended that medium tyre stint by only a singular lap. So will this play in the strategy, give him any sort of edge over myself? We currently sit 4th on the road, but the top 3, so Hamilton, Norris, and our teammate Hayes, will be boxing this lap. So this will give us the net lead, depending if we can jump Hamilton here in the pits. It looks like a very good stop from the crew down at Ferrari. And where is Hamilton now going to pop himself out when he comes out of the pit lane? We're going to take a look here, and we are going into the braking zone, and we are ahead. And how much are we ahead by? It's going to be a good couple of seconds, I reckon, maybe 2 seconds that we're going to be ahead of, and it's 1.5, 2 seconds. It is 2 seconds that we end up going ahead by. So that is a net gain for ourselves, because remember, we only had just passed Lewis Hamilton when we came into the pits, so that is definitely a gain, as now we need to try and achieve a nice fast lap time for Mark here to kind of get ourselves a decent gap here to Lewis Hamilton, just to make sure that we're not going to come under attack from Hamilton down the track as we ride on board with Oscar Piastri, and he's got himself now ahead of Lance Stroll. So that puts now the McLarens 3 and 4 on the road. Stroll is now dropping down to 5th position, so it's still a very strong position for the Aston Martin. We cross the line with a purple first sector, so we're definitely doing all right at the moment on these hard compound tyres, and we do achieve that fast lap time that Mark would like us to do. Back to our teammate, he is looking to get himself back ahead of George Russell, so Russell got himself back ahead through the pit stop phase, and now our teammate Sonny, he needs to do the work all over again to get that P6 back from the Mercedes. And nearly in exact same form that he did originally, he will get that position away from George Russell, and he will now move to his sights to Lance Stroll, and he'll go down the inside, riding on board with him, looking at the wheel work that he has to do to make sure that he gets that move to stick, and he does get it stuck. And that is him now up into 5th. So we're currently running 1st and 5th, which I reckon will be our best combined result as a team. Generally, if one of us is running up the front, the other one's having a bit of a mare of a day, as Antonelli now looks to try and get himself ahead of Fernando Alonso. He can't do it, so he'll have to sit in 10th position just for now, but into the next DRS zone, it looks like he's going to have the superior straight line speed. He'll go down the inside at the first corner, and is he going to be able to take that P9 away? He can take that 9th position away from the 2-time world champion, and George Russell, his teammate, is now looking to get himself ahead of the other Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. This will put him now up into 6th position. If he can make this move stick, our teammate Sonny Hayes, he's pulled over a 1 second gap, so he's now safe from any sort of attack from George Russell for the next couple of laps. Our next objective has come in to drain the ERS, and so ask and you shall receive, Mark. We will just dump the ERS going down this back straight here, just to try and get this objective absolutely done, because I don't want to be trying to maliciously use the ERS in certain parts of the circuit to try and get this done in over the course of a couple of laps. I would much rather, I'm very good at the moment of charging up the ERS around the circuit, so I'd much rather just dump it all down the straight at once, get a little bit of a gap, so our gap to Hamilton is now nearly 4 seconds, and then we can just focus on getting back into the rhythm for the last few laps of this Grand Prix. It's lap 27, so there's not very many opportunities left for Kimi Antonelli and Fernando Alonso to finish off this battle, and it is going to be Antonelli holding off Fernando Alonso just for now. We round the final corner, and we're going to take victory in the United States. Texas has treated us well, and we'll take career win number 3 and win number 3 this season.
Well, it's victory, and what a victory for Joshua Pearce.
Yes, it absolutely was, and what an incredible victory and an important milestone for them as we head into the business end of the season. You know that that's really going to matter from a confidence perspective to get them to the end of the season with potentially even more of these victories.
Only 3 can take to the podium, and here they come.
After being knocked out in qualifying 2, a win probably wasn't really on my cards. I knew that we had a good car because in practice and in the dry sessions of qualifying, we were absolutely rapid. But yeah, I didn't think a win was really on. We're joined up on the podium by Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris. So that's going to be a big swing in favour of Lando Norris in this World Championship. And the rest of the top 10 was Oscar Piastri, our teammate Sonny Hayes from 18th on the grid. So a mega drive from him. George Russell, Lance Stroll, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, and Fernando Alonso rounds out the points, and Max Verstappen was the only non-finisher, and that ends up meaning that he only leads the championship now by 49 points to Lando Norris. Myself sits third, 63 points behind, and then our teammate Sonny Hayes is in ninth, 68 points behind George Russell. Red Bull lead the Constructors' Championship by 53 points to McLaren. That's Ferrari in third, 73 points behind, and Apex GP were a further 95 points behind Ferrari. And for our driver ratings, our experience, awareness, and focus gain points with the racecraft to level 85 and pace to level 88 for an overall driver rating of level 86. And for our driver recognition against our teammate, it's bumped back up to 59%. So we had a small slump, but it's now back up to 59%. And that is going to be all for this episode. So if you did enjoy it, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you when we go to Mexico City for the Mexican Grand Prix.